Hello, and in this week's episode, first Clark meets his grandpa, Lana's parents weren't so happy, there's a new sheriff in town, and Chrissy psychs everyone out. Then, everyone's paternity is in question, Chloe can't mind her business again, and the Kents finally reveal the full story of Clark's adoption. This is the Smallville Chronicles. Hello, I'm Lou Gonzalez, and joining me as always is Alan Muir.
No one to hold them, no one to fold them.
We were talking about Red Dead right before we started, which is probably one of the best games I've ever played.
Yeah, but, I've been vicariously living that game through Conor McGraw's posts on Facebook.
Oh man, I've enjoyed petting the dogs. And what's interesting is
just go to every dog and just pet them. And
it actually serves a purpose in the game. Apparently, if you go and pet the dogs, the next time they see you, they don't bark at you, so they will not alert people to your presence. That is how deep that game goes. It is also the first time I've ever seen my dog's actual breed in represented anywhere, which is actually your group's dog, which is a Catahoula Cur.
Wow.
It's like a very weird breed. It's from the New Orleans area. That's it's kind of similar to a coonhound, but they're slightly different. They're a little bit stockier. So he's like a big hound dog that's kind of stocky and thick with web feet, so he could run through the swamps. But we were talking about Smallville. So I guess before we get into this episode, if you did not know, this season of Supergirl has a Smallville alum as one of the big bads of the season, which was really interesting. Did you know that, Alan?
Oh, you're talking about Davis Bloom?
Yeah, Doomsday. He is playing, I think it's I don't think they've said it in the show, but it's Citizen something. I don't remember his name exactly in the show. Because they don't use they have the outfit, but they are not using the name yet. But he's an anti-alien person.
Yeah, I saw a clip on YouTube where it was him, his wife, or whatever, the kid, and the grandfather.
Yes.
And talk about how they were they flash back to season 1, I believe.
Yeah, they flash back through all the seasons, actually.
Yeah, well, the clip I saw was when Supergirl gave the speech that you have to hope that we need all of you to hope again, or something.
Yeah, he's playing Agent Liberty.
I truly missed out on, because when I chose, when it came to choosing the shows, I should have chose Supergirl rather than Riverdale.
Oh, Riverdale season 2, I would just started watching, and season 3 has been pretty good. They also added, I think he's only in 2 episodes. I hope he comes back. Another Superman alum, which I don't know if he appeared in Smallville. You would know better. Manchester Black.
No, he never appeared.
Okay, so that's the first Superman alum in Supergirl that did not appear in Smallville.
All I know about the Manchester Black Supergirl stuff, people there was an outrage over his casting because they cast.
Oh, he's black.
Yeah,
but to have a character named Manchester, he doesn't show any of his powers, and he's the fiance of a new character that's in the show for 5 seconds. But he was just more of a hint. He's in and then he's out, and I'm sure he's going to come back. But he was fine.
Did he have the British accent?
Oh yeah, he was straight up English.
Thank God.
Yeah, because they actually say that's the whole point. Is his fiance? He told her to move out of England to avoid the scrutiny of aliens. Apparently, the safest place in the world for them is in the United States. And then she is missing, which is why he shows up. And then he thinks John is cheating with him. You know what I mean? And then they kind of suss everything out. But it's cool. And it was I was a character. I was oh, we actually get our first live action appearance. Because I couldn't remember. I'm I don't think he ever appeared in Smallville, because I don't even remember if he was really a big enough character to warrant anything, because he seems to me he's more of a, like, isn't he like the All-Star Superman kind of run, like was what kind of made him, and then they did the cartoon a couple years ago with him in it. He's like a very, very low level character on Superman totem pole, even though I think he's really interesting.
All I remember is that there was an animated movie, Superman Who
Yeah,
Cares About the Man?
versus the elites.
Yeah, it was based on Superman Who Cares About the Man of Tomorrow or something.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Not All Star Superman. That's what the book I was thinking of. Yeah, and that's what really made Manchester. But really, he hasn't really done that much.
He was in Teen Titans during
in the New 52.
After they relaunched it, like the second or third time.
Yeah, and if you want to hear us talk about all that, you can check out the soon to be coming comic book show.
And now comics.
Yep. But we can jump into this first episode, which is Redo or Redux.
Yeah.
So this came out October 29th, 2002. So the basic premise of this, I guess, like the three kind of, or I guess there's like four main plots. So you have the Kents need money, and Martha comes up with the idea of asking her father, which brings up
Jonathan does not want at all to happen.
Yes, because they do not get along, and Clark is kind of like, why have I never met him? He's like another piece of the family. The second storyline is the new principal. So replacing Principal Kwan, we get Principal Reynolds, played by Richard Grant.
When Clark meets him, we get a sort of a standoff moment between him and Lex. Due to their past.
Yeah, so we learned that he was the principal at the prep school Lex went to.
Do you remember the name of the prep school?
Excelsior.
Yep.
Which this is also us for our first time back since Stanley's passing. So it's kind of like a great way to segue into saying like R.I.P. Stanley. But yeah, we can get, when we get to, I guess, more of their backstory, we can go through that. The third plot in this episode is kind of our monster of the week, which is, I guess, like a youth vampire.
Yeah.
Played by, or the character is Chrissy Parker, played by Maggie Lawson from Psych. I don't really know what else she's really done, but I love that show. I loved her in that show. And she's really good in this episode for what they do. And then our fourth, who barely gets its really attention and is more leads up into the next episode and coming storyline, is Lana finding a photo of her mother and some other guy, and kind of going down the rabbit hole of that as well. But to start off here, we basically get, again, the Kents are worried about money, so I believe it is Clark that contacts his grandfather.
No. Martha contacts him. He arrives. Clark meets him for the first time. But Jonathan is away and doesn't know about it. Or when he shows up. And when Clark tries to shake his hand, he's very hesitant.
Yes, and we kind of get to find out that he never really thought that Jonathan was good enough for Martha, and there's lots of deep-seated resentment between both of them, that Jonathan held Martha back, and from Jonathan saying that basically he was never good enough. And then when we get to the end of the episode, it's even more explained why there is such issues between them. While this is going on at school, we have a swim meet with Clark and character Troy. Troy goes off and kisses one of the cheerleaders, Chrissy, and then as he's swimming, he starts to drown. Clark super speeds underwater and gets to him. Very similar to the effects that they use in that Aquaman
show that we
pilot.
watched.
Yeah. And when he pulls him out, Troy is an old man. He's suddenly 60. Chloe gets in her research and they put it as a case of like rapid progeria, I believe.
Yeah.
So while this is going on, Lana finds the photo. She's unsure about it. The year makes it so that it's during her parents' marriage. I don't remember if she gives it to Lex first or if she figures out that her parents legally separated first.
I think this happens. All this happens in the next episode.
No.
Wait, no. I think she gives it to Lex first.
Yeah, she gives it to Lex, and I think that's kind of the end of the episode. We find out. Okay, so she gives the photo to Lex. During her conversation, her and Clark are talking about their two families and not knowing the truths. Clark kind of not knowing what's going on between his father and grandfather and why there's all this stuff and how he would love to have like another piece of a family around him. And Lana kind of dealing with the idea of like maybe her parents weren't perfect and the possibility that her father, who she thought was her father, may not be her father. I don't think they really upfront say that, but it's like so heavily implied that that's what she's dancing around. She just doesn't want to say it. And then while
I think it's either a line in this episode or the next episode where Clark is in the loft, and Lana comes in. They're both talking, and he mentions that his parents are being secretive. And she's
I think it's the very end of this episode.
The Ken's being secretive.
Yes.
Yeah, I found that just to be a funny thing.
Yeah, it ties the two characters well together, that they're kind of dealing with similar issues simultaneously, and you kind of confide in each other, although Clark obviously can't fully confide, which is always an issue with him. And then the other plot is this new principal is here. He's kind of a hardliner. And he's immediately like, I think makes Clark be in trouble, which he's never in trouble.
Yeah, Chloe tries to defend the principal or she says something along the lines of, like, if he doesn't, there's really no problem that if he doesn't like him as everyone else, since everyone else does.
Yeah, because in fact, he's actually like very for Chloe. Like he wants to help the paper. He's all about like truth and wanting like the school paper to keep everybody accountable.
Yeah, and also go over his background and how he was going to be. He was on his way on the fast track to being on the Metropolis Board of Education, and then he ends up in Smallville.
Well, he ends up like doing nothing for like a decade or something like that, and then just pops up in Smallville here. If I'm correct. He goes from that being the principal of that prep school to resigning, I believe, and then just doing nothing for trying to figure out the math, probably like 5 to 7 years before popping up in Smallville High. And then while this is going on, we have Troy's buddy, Russell. He gets a kiss from Chrissy, and then...
Do you remember the line?
Oh, no, I cannot remember. I know it was a really terrible line.
She says... Chrissy says, "I'm doing this for Troy and the others." And he's like, "What?" the others who live inside me, or live in me, or whatever. And that's when you see the terrible effects of when she's kissing him. He's
Oh yeah,
rapidly turning into like a skeleton.
mm-hmm.
And how they thought when the police found him or whoever found him, they thought he was a bum until they found his wallet.
Yep, and they again make it like a rapid onset progeria, which I did not see until just scrolling down some of the trivia. But the Troy was actually in an earlier
Yeah,
episode. He was the
isn't
kid that made fun of Amy Adams' character from the first season.
no, not
No. I'm sorry. You're probably
the remember like the groundskeepers for the Lexus Mansion.
yes.
The daughter who had a thing for Lex, or who was
Yes.
obsessed with him.
And I'm pretty sure that actress appeared in season 2 of Riverdale.
What?
I don't know. Yeah, did you watch season 2?
I could not watch season 2.
Okay. She's in like one episode and it's like very throwaway. And I was like, because she kind of looks like Dakota Fanning, but not really.
Yeah.
So like I was like, oh, I'm like, wow, like Dakota Fanning looks like garbage. And I was like, oh, no, it's not. Yeah, she plays like a meth head in like one episode for like a second.
I'm not gonna say what I wanted to say.
Yeah. But yeah, back to this. So basically, during all this, there's supposed to be a pep rally. Chrissy is, I guess, the captain of the cheerleading squad, who's running everything. She kind of connects with Clark because the principal makes Clark write an essay on where he wants to be in 5 years, and Chrissy basically gives this whole thing of like, "Who cares? Like, high school's the best time of our lives," type speech.
And
then,
something that's running through another thing that runs through the episode with the Chrissy characters, the principal's trying to get in. First, it was getting like her transcripts from her previous school, and wanting to trying to get in contact with the parents.
Yeah, and then her answer to this is to basically set him up to kill him before the pep rally.
Yeah, and steal his souls.
Yes. And so from here we see this start to happen. Clark busts in, he stops her. She falls, looks in a mirror, and basically ages into dust.
No, it's not. They go full on. They go full on B movie, where it's the mirror is rotating, and you're just seeing it get worse and worse and worse until
she becomes like
a horror
the melting
movie. I'm melting
face.
I'm melting.
It very much reminded me of Raiders.
Yeah,
like the end of Raiders. Like it's really some.
Don't look at it.
Yeah. But yeah, so they have like a spinning mirror thing, and then she finally turns to dust,
and the dust gets blown away.
So no one knows what happened to her. And then
they even make a joke about the principal, though, that he was happy that Clark saved him, but still they made a joke saying that he was still mad that he was late, or no, that he reminded him that he was late.
Yep. And then from this, we kind of get the reveal with the Kents. And basically, they say that the reason why there's such a big rift is that they basically cut Martha's dad out of their life because Clark was kind of unsure with his powers as a child, and they weren't sure how much they could trust. I think it's William is the grandfather's name, right?
I think so.
With that idea, so they basically cut him out. So the reason that they aren't closer is because of Clark and them trying to protect him.
And he gets kind of emotional over it.
Yeah, he's despondent. He does end up connecting. I think he goes and meets the grandfather at like the hotel at some point. So they have like a little bit of a connection, like something. And
he gives him a seat, like a desk that has that he uploaded a bunch of like
family stuff and stuff about him. Yeah, which was a good
And
scene.
he in return gives Clark a letter for Martha.
Yeah, I think a letter and like a cashier's check.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So, but this is a great scene to kind of show like great character development. Both the Kents and Clark are being like, they were so protective of him that they were willing. Like Martha was willing to cut ties with her father to protect Clark, and Jonathan to kind of take the brunt of that, to like be the reason. Um. So this is why it's even like more just like it hurts Clark even more. This is when Lana shows up and finds out from that she found out from Lex that her parents were separated, and this picture was taken during that separation. And then Clark tells her he likes finding out the truth, and that he probably wants to study journalism in college, and that Chloe's been rubbing off on him. And that then Lana's basically says that with the way the timeline works out, that the man in the photo could be her real father.
Yeah, which leads into. Oh, wait, we didn't even talk about why the principals has
Oh yes,
an attitude
the issue with Lex.
Yeah, an issue with Lex. He comes by, mentions that they're upgrading at the plant, and wants to donate old computers. And this whole thing turns into the principal brings up Lex when Lex was about to be expelled from the school, or something that we're not going to see for a few more seasons.
Yep.
Lionel said he'd donate money to, or he donate money, or he was going to do two things, or he would donate money if they did two things: if they would not expel, if they would keep Lex in the school, i.e., not expelling him, and he wanted them to fire the principal. Did I leave anything out?
No, you got it. I was going to say there's like a couple other little trivia things I saw about this episode and some of the things in it. Did you have anything? I already said the one about Troy. One of the other ones I saw was William Clark's grandfather actually is he apparently lives in Coast City.
Yeah, that's where
Green Lantern is from. I believe that's the first mention of that city in the show.
Yeah, because the other places they mentioned have been Edge City, which I don't think exists in DC.
No, it does. I can't remember who's from Edge City. Maybe it's from where Cyborg is. I think it was one of the things that they retconned at some point, but I thought Edge City at some point was like their version of Detroit for a little bit. But I could be completely wrong. But I believe it was a city for like a bit. And then when they got, what do you call it, where Static is? I can't remember what the name of that world. And those characters,
The Milestone characters?
yeah, I think that they had Milestone take its place. I could look it up. But I'm pretty sure Edge City was a city. And somebody was from there at some point. Let's see how wrong I am. Okay, so it was created for the show, but then they turned it into the home of the hero in Dark Horse the Mask. Like, from like the movie, Stanley Ipkiss.
Wow.
And then, yeah, so maybe that is where I heard of Edge City before. So, and they've used crossovers with it as well, with like the Joker mask and Lobo versus the Mask, and Grifter versus the Mask when they crossed over with Wildstorm.
Man, I miss Wildstorm so much.
It's back. I like the current book going on.
Oh no, I mean like the old stuff from Wildstorm.
Oh yeah, sure.
Just a quick fun fact. Before DC committed to day and date digital, back like 7 years ago, when right before the new 2 launched, prior to that, they pretty much all but extinguished the flame of Wildstorm, and Wildstorm was solely working on digital, like putting old digital issues up. And the only reason I know this is because when I would buy old back issues of like Mark Waid's Flash, it would say brought to digital by Wildstorm, and it had the logo. Man, and the thing is, that was 6 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So before we move on to the next one, I have one more like part of like kind of trivia thing. So they actually filmed this episode right after the finale of season 1. So that is why I guess this is before like they reshuffled stuff. So that's why Pete is not really in this episode, because when they filmed this, the idea was that Pete was still unaware of Clark's powers, and why he sends Pete away before taking on Chrissy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is one of those things where like they shuffled stuff around a little bit. So, yeah, now it's kind of the last little thing in this one. I think the second issue is a lot more second episode is a lot juicier. So that's issue 7 of season 2, and that is Lineage. This episode
Episode 7.
Yeah, episode 7 of season 2. So in this episode, there's really 2 main stories, I think. Because it's just the Clark stuff and the Lana stuff.
There's also the flashback stuff.
Oh yeah, but that's connected to the Clark stuff. So basically, you have.
Well, it sort of ties into Lex a little bit as well.
Yeah. Well, when I say the Clark stuff, I mean like the whole main plot of the episode is that this character Rachel Dunleavy, who was one of Lionel's mistresses, she was like his secretary, I think.
No, she was a nurse for Lex.
Okay, she was Lex's nurse when he was young. She was also his Lionel's mistress. She shows up at the school saying that she is Clark's mother, implying that Lionel is the father, since we're going to kind of go into this like right from the jump. But basically, she implies all this, and the reason is because there's only one adoption from the agency that Clark's went through, and that she's
United Charities.
Yes, and that she's the only person ever to have given up a child. So therefore, if the ipso facto, Clark is her son.
Yeah, her son Lucas, and that also would make him Lex's brother, half brother. Yes.
So she ambushes Clark at school. Clark tells his parents about it. At the town, I believe. And then I'm trying to think of the order of this. The Kents end up meeting her. They tell her, they dissuade her and say that no, and not to bother them again. Rachel then goes and visits Lex to encourage Clark to let her get to know him. Lex is reluctant.
He mentions that Jonathan's not a fan of his.
Yes. The next day at school is when kind of I guess the 1C plot in this is that Clark and Chloe have a fight is because Chloe posted about it, Clark's situation on adoption websites, which is where Rachel found this from.
And again, they were corresponding.
Yes, and exactly what Clark told her not to do the last time, and she did anyway, where she got in his goddamn business again, and Clark loses his shit. Rightfully so, I would say. Because Chloe just cannot mind her own goddamn business. I believe it's also here where we have Clark kind of throw her own mother in her face to Chloe.
Yeah.
Which is our first kind of hint at Chloe's mother and the story behind that. Which is really nothing. It's more of like, oh yeah, where is Chloe's mom? But he kind of throws in her face like, why are you doing this? I don't want to know. Why don't you like go and check out your own mom or whatever, and like leave me the hell alone with this? And sends her into tears, which she kind of, I would say she kind of realizes that she is in the wrong. And
and then when Clark leaves, he has he's going to leave, and he's out the door. He thinks about going back, but then just keeps on going.
Lana later finds Chloe upset, and she kind of, without Chloe offering any details, asks Chloe to kind of do the same thing, but for her. And she gives her the picture to kind of find out who the guy is, and about her mom. And Chloe, I think, says like, "Oh, like, why don't you just go now?" Lana already knows the guy's name. It's Henry Small, as in the Smalls of Smallville.
Yeah, the first family.
Yes. And she's like, "Well, why don't you just go and talk to him?" To which Lana goes and knocks on his door, which he doesn't answer, and then walks inside and is basically like, "Hey, my name is Lana Lang."
The door is open a little bit, and she can hear him yelling on the phone, and he just smashes the fuck out of that phone.
Yeah, it's a cool scene, and he basically is like, "I know you work at that coffee shop." She's like, "Oh yeah." It's like, "I never go there because I don't like their chain coffee garbage."
No. He says he boycotts it because of the Luthers. He makes a reference to what France said about the Nazis. And he says to never contact him again.
Yep. From here, Clark goes to his parents and basically is like, "I know Lionel's involved. You need to tell me the whole story right now." And this is where we get our giant flashback. That we get like
that kind of happened. Yeah, it kind of goes back and forth throughout the episode.
Yeah. So basically, let's cover the whole flashback in one huge chunk. But so we go back to the day of the meteor shower in 1989. The truck is flipped over. We find toddler Clark. The town is in chaos. There is a truck that is abandoned that Jonathan finds. He pulls the guy out of it. I guess he was dead. Because he's not in the truck. So I'm assuming he's just dead.
Well, no. He finds the guy and tries to help. Like, he checks his pulse and notices that he died on impact.
Yeah.
So he kind of gets rid of him. Gets rid of the body. Which, not really the right thing to do, Jonathan.
Yeah, also, like, how did no one connect that truck back to them and the dead guy? But, plot. But they use this pickup truck to hide, and then they put the ship in the back, which I don't know how they got it up there, but still it gets into the back. They cover it with a tarp. As they are driving...
They nearly kill Lionel.
who is holding a passed out Lex.
No.
Oh, no, he's by himself. You're right.
Lex is he's just stuttering or
Yeah,
saying
Lionel's
Lex,
in shock.
Yeah, he's in clear shock. Jonathan goes. He asks, "Where's your son?" And Lionel just points to the field. Jonathan goes in, finds Lex, covers him up in his jacket, and I had a major flashback to the Star Wars prequels, specifically Anakin Skywalker meet Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh yeah, it's very similar to that because they make eye contact in the car, the two kids. This is the point where we get a break in the flashback, but I would rather just kind of close it out. Which basically we find out they go to the hospital, Lex is fine, and Lionel tells Jonathan, like, my name is Lionel Luthor. If you ever need anything, let me know. I owe you one.
Yeah, and gives him his business card.
And he's like, yeah, don't be afraid to call me. I owe you one. You saved my son's life. When I could do nothing, like, you're more man than me. He kind of butters him up with that stuff. So then we cut to, I guess, like a couple of days later, and Jonathan calls him to kind of get the and then Lionel shows up when all the adoption stuff is.
I thought this was when this happens after Sheriff Ethan drops by.
Yes, yeah. This is like the break, but I would rather just cover the whole flashback.
No, I'm talking about in the flashback.
Oh, yeah. The sheriff does stop by at some point
because he found the remnants of Jonathan's car, and Jonathan tells Martha to take Clark back to hide Clark, and Clark just
overpowers her and runs around like a toddler.
Yeah, and Ethan is curious who he is, and they just say that
I think it's Martha says that they went and adopted him.
Yeah, and Jonathan says, we like to keep, we like to keep things private.
From here, it's when we cut to Lionel shows up. This is again in the past, and he hands Jonathan all the adoption papers, and then asks Jonathan, I'm trying to build a new plant in town, and I really need a piece of land that your friend,
the Ross
brothers, if you could just talk to him about it. And Jonathan's like, well, there's not like really much I can say to them to get them to change their mind. And Jonathan basically, in a not so veiled threat, is like, it's really easy for someone to call Child Protective Services and figure out that these papers are bullshit.
Yeah, and then as Lionel starts down the stairs, Jonathan says, "Are you threatening me?" And Lionel's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not threatening you. I'm just letting you. I'm just more. What were the exact words?"
He says something like, I'm just asking you for a small favor, and just informing you of what can happen.
Yeah, and I was like, that mother.
Cold-blooded.
I love this guy.
Yeah, he's just basically forgot there is no point in which Lionel is not a cold-blooded sociopath. Yeah. So this is where all the resentments to the Luthors comes from with Jonathan, and where we get why Pete hates Lex and why that becomes a whole issue later on. This is the kind of final truth of why all these animosities exist when we start the show off. Is that Lionel's the only person that knows about this. He never really truly puts together anything until later on in the series. But yeah, so this is all going on. So at one point during the flashback, I think it is after they're in the car taking everybody to the hospital. We have Sheriff Ethan, who appeared in the flashback and throughout the series, shows up and says that the Rachel Dunleavy has asked the basically he's like filing lawsuit since Clark is still a minor, and she wants Clark to submit a DNA test to prove that she's his mom.
And Judge Ross approved it.
Yes, that would be Pete's mom. And so basically from here, obviously I guess Clark does the DNA test, but they obviously can't run it because he won't be human. So Clark and Pete break in, and Pete basically is like, why did you bring me along? And Clark's like, well, I needed some spit.
Yeah.
Which he rips open the like DNA thing and replaces his. And wouldn't you be like,
how
why would
they? Yeah,
they would throw out all of them because be like, well, obviously somebody tampered with this. Why else would it be ripped open? Like they do, he does it with so little, like no, like finesse doesn't exist.
He does it. He does not give two shits about whether or not like being stealth and everything.
No, they literally just like run in there. It is ridiculous. But basically, from here, Rachel gets angry and like has a thing because the DNA results come back negative. She doesn't believe it, so she ends up kidnapping. I think she like attacks Lex and drugs him.
What exactly happens is Lex is driving out in his Porsche. I don't know much about cars.
Yeah, it's the silver Porsche she's always driving.
And he has to stop because she blocks him. And does she hit him and then inject him or
I think she just like kind of surprises him and just like jabs him in the neck with it.
Yeah.
But also like, but then this is another one of those like plot things like, why did she get rid of both cars?
Yeah.
But it's like those hand wavy things you don't think of, but like rewatching a show and like looking at stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, like she can't just like do that. Like where the hell is like people gonna be like, oh, his car's missing. But again, they do figure out that Lex is missing. He kind of wakes up tied to a chair and she has an axe and she basically says, I think she calls Lionel on Lex's phone and is basically like, either you go out there and you tell them like, I know you screwed up the DNA test. You call a press conference and say that like Clark is our son and all this stuff. And then Lex is like, he's never going to do that. Like he won't, like he does not do that, which he doesn't do.
And she says, your father's killed you, Lex. She goes, takes an axe. And as she's doing this, Clark shows up. And he does the fastest right turn I've ever seen, where she swings the axe and hits Clark, shatters off, and he lands right up against the filing cabinet. And she's like, what are you? And he's like, I'm not your son. And then she just starts crying and crying and crying.
Mm-hmm. She basically has like a psychotic break, but we also learned through the episode she had spent time in psychiatric hospital before, but we weren't ever sure if like Lionel just kind of got her put there or if she really belonged there. But obviously, as we can see that she's homicidal, she probably belonged there. So that's why if she says anything, no one's going to believe anything that she says. And Lex, like always, is knocked out. And it probably became evil because of all the concussions that he suffered, thanks to Clark saving him.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. She's about to hit him. Then he kicks her like back. And he falls and knocks himself out.
Yeah, he suffers so many concussions. Like, he's out cold so often. That's like, it has to be like close to 10 in the 2 seasons, and we're like not even halfway through season 2.
I mean, he's gotten more concussions. He probably got more concussions than Benoit.
Oh yeah, we should try to keep count now, but I would say he's at least at 5 at this point, minimum, if not more.
And we're not even at that halfway point of season 2.
No. So Lionel does the TV thing. He doesn't admit to it. So from here, we kind of get the Clark Kent's that whole story with the Luthers is wrapped up. At the very end, we get Lana's father shows up at the coffee shop and basically is like, "Why don't we get a cup of coffee? I'm sorry, like you just surprised me."
Yeah, it says Mr.
Small,
right? And he says, "No, you can call me Henry."
And we did gloss over one other part where Lana and Clark talk about it, and he's just or talk about stuff, and Clark's just like, "Who the hell just like shows up in your face is like, hey, I'm your long lost like mom." And Lana's like, me? Because she did that exact same thing to the guy Henry, and Clark's like, "Oh, like I didn't mean." And Lana kind of realizes like, "Oh yeah, that kind of does come off as kind of kooky," and also like kind of put somebody on a spot that they're not going to be comfortable with.
Yeah, he says, "I'm not sure if I'm your father, but," or she no. And then she says that, and then Lana apologizes for ambushing him. And he says something along the lines of, "Maybe that may be a sign that they are related."
Mm-hmm. And then our last little thing is Lex confronts Lionel about not trying to save his life
and the fate of
the child.
of
So
Lucas.
he basically says that Rachel showed up with a kid
And wanted him to leave Lex's mother and marry him.
And Lionel says that the baby died as an infant, but when
he died before his first birthday.
And then when Lex leaves, Lionel opens a locket containing some hair and a picture of him and a smiling boy. And it's blonde.
Not Lex.
Yeah, it's blonde hair, and the boy is a toddler.
And this will come back later on in the season. Or this will pay off.
It comes back like 3 times or something like that through the series, I feel like. They're like Lionel's bastard children.
Well, one is a clone.
Yes, one's a clone.
One is
a fake.
One's a fake. One's a vampire.
And the one's a completely separate one.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The vampire.
No, one's also a daughter.
Oh yeah.
So it happens like 4 or 5 times. Like Lionel just was like throwing it around.
Yeah, he
unwrapped.
He totally did not care. He totally did not care about his wife.
Yeah, or not just that. Like he also didn't wrap it up, which for like a billionaire, like you'd think that you would do. But yeah, like so this episode I think is one of the better ones of the first 2 seasons. We get like a ton of backstory.
Lionel does the one thing that no one expected him to do or to admit. He says, "I'm not the best father."
He says I wasn't the best father and I wasn't like a perfect husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that basically wraps us up for this episode.
Okay. You can find me on Instagram at comicsboy. You can find me on Twitter at the Alan Muir. You can find my writings on losharo.wordpress.com. You can listen to me and Gary and Lou on an upcoming podcast that will be coming sometime soon, whenever we get to at least 6 episodes. But it seems like that podcast is cursed. And to quote Simon's Quest, "What a terrible night to have a curse." Since we tried, technically last week was Lazaro Games theme week. That couldn't get that. That didn't work well, so we tried for this week. That's not gonna work well either. So 2 theme weeks in 1 month, motherfucker. So the theme week will be in December, and it'll be right before our gift guide. That I'm gonna try to get everyone who's writing for the site work to help pitch in for, which is basically just game recommendations.
Yes, like I stalked you guys. So you can get me at Twitter at Lou A. Gonzalez. Same thing on Instagram. Also in the Phantom Zone and Pixels groups, always chatting it up in there. On the podcast with Alan coming out on cartoons. I'm on the Phantom Zone podcast all the time. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to all of the podcasts on iTunes, anywhere you get podcasts, as well as YouTube. And loshorror.wordpress.com. You can find me right there. I will probably write something on Heroes in Crisis at some point because I'm a masochist and I read shit that I hate. But that's about it. So we will check you guys on the next episode. Oh, I'm Lou Gonzalez.
I'm Alan Muir, and this podcast stands for Truth, Justice, New York, Away.